I do. Despite these contradictory statements by the two governments, there didn't appear to be a deal on the table that was at all acceptable to the United States, so the president made the right decision. I think you do have to question the preparation for this meeting. Ordinarily, you wouldn't want to put the president halfway around the world in a high-profile summit meeting without a very good sense of what the other side was going to say. Ordinarily, you'd actually set up the agreement ahead of time. That obviously didn't happen here. And this buddy relationship that the president has put together, he's been so overt in his appreciation for Kim Jong Un, he's been so effusive in his praise, that clearly didn't work. So it's time for a return to normal diplomacy. We do have a very able negotiator in Steve Biegun. That diplomacy can continue, but my sense is the North Koreans are not going to want to give up their nuclear weapons program. This is going to be a very hard negotiation ahead.
Yeah, Ambassador Hill, the fact that they, there was sort of a warm greeting of these two leaders ahead of time, and it had even been on the schedule that there was going to be some sort of agreement signing that got canceled when this deal got pulled or didn't go anywhere earlier today. What is the read-through for China? Because we have these talks continuing between the U.S. and China on the trade front as well. The fact that we could see something like that play out with North Korea, what's the message to that country?
Well, first of all, I think one of the fundamental problems with the Trump administration's approach is the lack of diplomatic architecture. I mean, China is not indifferent to the fate of North Korea. China has a great deal of interest there, a very long border. And so the idea the Chinese are going to be content with after-action reports is really, I don't think, going to work for China. Now, maybe if there is movement on these trade issues and we can get back into some kind of pattern of cooperation with the Chinese, I think it would behoove us to talk to the Chinese to make sure the North Koreans don't go shopping for a better deal. And, I must say, when I was negotiating with the North Koreans and they'd walk back something they told me they were going to do, I'd march right over to the Chinese. We were in the same negotiating facility, and I'd tell the Chinese chairman there, Wu Da-wei, I said, I'm not going to talk to your friends anymore until you get them to walk back that walk back. I'm just not going to deal with them. And I'd kind of strut away, and the Chinese would rush off to the North Koreans. That's what happened. And we'd eventually work it through. So I think there's some real consequences to this idea that we don't have any partners in this. And finally, I would say I was a little surprised that Secretary Pompeo left Hanoi and went to the Philippines. I'm sure it's very important to meet with President Duterte, but I would have made a beeline to the countries involved. I mean, after all, Japan was very concerned we might do a deal with long-range missiles and ignore the missiles that could reach Japan. We certainly have to talk to the North Koreans. I'm sure the Secretary is going to get there, but why the stop in Manila on the way? I mean, I'd get right there. So I think there's some real problems with diplomacy. And with respect to dragging the president 20,000 miles to Hanoi and back, yeah, I would like to know how that all happened, because the North Koreans have talked for some time about this idea they're going to shut Yongbyon down and do it, have it dismantled under American, not supervision, but at least we'd have observers there. Pretty big step. And they're saying that they were only looking at some aspect of the trade sanctions. Again, we need to hear from the Americans what this was about. Anyway, You just get the impression this is kind of ragged diplomacy, and it just doesn't have to be this chaotic.